I still don't know why I clicked follow. Maybe it was the photo. Him sitting on a rusted out fire escape, sunlight cutting across his face, hoodie sleeves rolled up to the elbows, sipping iced coffee like it was a cigarette. The caption was just 3 words: September feels different. It wasn't even that clever, but something about it made me pause. He looked calm, not like he was trying to be hot, or ironic, or internet famous. Just like a guy living in his own little corner of the world. So I followed him. Didn't expect anything. Didn't expect that 2 hours later, I'd get a message from him. Okay, you've officially passed the vibe check. Your playlists are. That caught me off guard. I had forgotten I linked my Spotify in my bio. I answered, bold of you to assume I didn't just throw my most tolerable songs into one playlist to impress strangers. His reply came 10 seconds later. You have the Antlers and LCD sound system in the same mix. That's not performative. That's a cry for help. Let's talk about it. And just like that, I was in. We ended up chatting for almost 3 hours that night. His name was Evan. 28. Lived across town from me but knew my neighborhood because he used to work over here at some indie bookstore that had since gone out of business. He was a photographer, mostly portraits, he said, but I'm trying to love the ugly parts of the city too, like moldy bricks and trash cans. Our sense of humor lined up almost scarily well. We both used too many parentheses. We both hated Twitter, but still checked it constantly. We both had this irrational belief that you can tell everything about a person based on their coffee order and their high school superlative. He was best hair. I was most likely to leave and never come back. At some point, I realized we were texting on 2 different platforms simultaneously. It had evolved that quickly. By the time we signed off around midnight, my face hurt from smiling so much. The next day, he messaged me again first, and the next day after that, and every day after that, for the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks of constant messaging turned into voice notes. Voice notes turned into phone calls. And then, finally, a simple text from Evan at 10:43 on a Thursday night. Okay, I need to see if you're real. I laughed out loud at that, sitting cross-legged on my bed in an old hoodie that was probably violating several fabric health codes. I wrote back, you're the one who sounds like an AI. Who says cryptic urban decay is underrated in casual conversation? He replied, let's grab coffee, Saturday. I know a spot. I paused. Not because I didn't want to, but because I really did. And I hadn't had a crush hit me this fast since, I don't know, high school? But we were grown now. Well, functioning adults anyway. I typed back, I'm in, text me the place. That Saturday, I stood outside this little coffee shop he'd picked, hands shoved in my jacket pockets, pretending not to be anxious as hell. It was one of those spots with rickety outdoor chairs and overpriced lattes that looked like art projects. I recognized it immediately. It had been on his Instagram. Then he walked up. Evan looked exactly like his photos, which somehow made me more nervous. He was wearing a beanie, worn-in jeans, and that hoodie I'd seen in his first post. No camera bag, no flashy anything. Just him smiling like this wasn't a big deal, even though I felt like my heart was learning how to beat again. You're taller than I expected, he said. You're quieter, I shot back, smiling. Give me 5 minutes, he said. The caffeine will fix that. We got our drinks. He ordered a pour-over. I got an oat milk latte because I'm a cliche, and sat at this little metal table near the curb. The conversation was instant. Not in that forced small talk kind of way, but like, we were picking up from where we left off. Every text and call we'd shared felt like a soft runway to this moment, and it didn't disappoint. We talked about our worst jobs. His, wedding photographer for a couple who broke up during the reception. Mine, handing out samples at Costco in a shrimp costume. We shared stories about our childhoods, both raised by single moms, both awkward teenagers who grew into guys still figuring it out. At one point, Evan leaned back and said, okay, I have to ask, what was your gut feeling when you saw my DM? I laughed. Honestly, I thought, who the hell quotes their own IKEA disaster? He smirked. Bold move, I know. But it worked. He looked at me for a long moment, that small, quiet confidence settling over his features. I'm glad it did. After coffee, we walked for hours. Just through the neighborhood, through alleys with peeling murals and cracked sidewalks and that golden hour kind of sunlight that makes you feel like something's about to change. And I think it did. When we finally said goodbye outside the subway station, he hugged me. Firm, intentional. And I didn't want to let go. He said, "This was good, really good." I nodded. "Let's do it again." And we did. A lot. We started seeing each other a couple times a week, then 3 times. Then suddenly I was forgetting what my weekends were like before Evan. He'd come over after his shoots, sometimes still smelling like darkroom chemicals, and that weird pine-scented cologne he claimed he, quote, accidentally stole from a friend in college. I'd throw together pasta or a frozen Trader Joe's situation, and we'd eat sitting cross-legged on the couch, watching dumb horror movies, or scrolling through music videos like we were 16 again. The thing is, it didn't feel like dating, not in the who pays the check or what are we kind of way. It felt like hanging out with someone who just fit. Like I didn't have to perform around him. I didn't have to worry if I was being too quiet, or too goofy, or too tired to be charming. Evan just saw me and didn't flinch. The first time he stayed over, it wasn't planned. We were up late watching old music documentaries and ended up dozing off, tangled in each other like we'd been doing this for years. When I woke up, he was still asleep, arm thrown across my chest, mouth slightly open. It was stupidly endearing. I just laid there staring at the ceiling, wondering how I got lucky enough to have someone fall asleep like that next to me. When he woke up, he looked at me and said, "Morning breath aside, this feels alarmingly good." I grinned. "Yeah, but wait till you meet my laundry pile. That's the real test." Over the next month, we became that couple, texts throughout the day, sleepy voice calls when we were apart, playlists sent at random hours. I'd go with him to photo exhibits. He came to my friend's game night and actually liked my weird friends. We shared little pieces of our pasts, like Polaroids being handed over one by one. Evan telling me about his dad leaving, me opening up about my first real heartbreak. There wasn't a big moment where we had the talk. We just knew. I remember the night it really hit me. We were walking home after getting drinks, both slightly tipsy, fingers brushing but not quite holding. He stopped mid-step, in the middle of the sidewalk under this flickering street lamp, and turned to me. "I don't know when exactly it happened," he said, "but I think about you even when I don't mean to." I blinked. Same. That was it. No fireworks, no dramatic kiss. Just quiet truth between us in the middle of an empty block. But then, like life does, it got complicated. Things were good, almost too good. We'd gotten into a rhythm that felt easy. Texts while at work, sleepovers on the weekends, random midweek meetups just to walk around and hold hands like teenagers. Evan had even started leaving a spare toothbrush at my place. I hadn't labeled it or anything, but I noticed when it was there, and I definitely noticed when it wasn't. Then came the shift. It started with a phone call. We were on my couch, finishing some Thai takeout, half watching reruns of Community when Evan's phone buzzed. He picked it up, looked at the screen, and his whole vibe changed, like someone had just walked over his grave. "Everything okay?" I asked. He silenced it, then set the phone face down. "Yeah. Just someone I haven't talked to in a while." I didn't push. I figured if it was important, he'd tell me. But a few days later, I noticed he was distant, not in an obvious way. Still texting, still meeting up, but there was a hesitation I couldn't quite name. Like he was thinking through everything he said before he said it. Then, finally, on a rainy Tuesday night, he said it. "So Adam reached out," Evan said as we sat in a tiny wine bar we liked, the hum of jazz playing low in the background. I blinked. "Adam?" "My ex," he said, not meeting my eyes. "We were together for 3 years. It ended messy. I hadn't heard from him since." I took a slow sip of my drink. "Okay." He messaged me last week, Evan continued. Said he was back in the city, wanted to talk. For closure, whatever that means. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. And? I met up with him today. There it was. The clench in my chest I didn't know I was bracing for. Evan rushed to explain. I didn't tell you, because I wasn't sure what it would be. I wasn't hiding it, I don't know. I panicked. What did he want? I asked, voice low. He apologized, Evan said. Said he regretted how things ended. Asked if I ever thought about trying again. And do you? I asked. I hated how small my voice sounded. He didn't answer right away, just stared at the condensation on his glass. I don't know, he said finally. Seeing him brought up a lot, it was confusing. That hurt more than I expected. We sat in silence for a bit, the kind that feels like a chasm opening up beneath you. I left the bar feeling like I couldn't breathe. Evan didn't try to stop me. That week was quiet. No texts, no calls. I didn't even see his toothbrush in my bathroom anymore. I felt like I was holding my breath, waiting to see what version of this story we were going to be. Were we a great almost? A brief thing that got derailed by bad timing? Or were we worth more than that? It had been 5 days since I'd last heard from Evan. 5 days of checking my phone like some lovesick teenager. 5 days of not sleeping well, of overthinking everything. Every message we'd exchanged, every look, every touch. I tried to convince myself that maybe he just needed space, that maybe he was figuring things out. But the truth was harder to swallow. Maybe he wasn't choosing me. That Friday night, I went for a walk just to get out of my head. I ended up near his place without even realizing it. I stood across the street from his building for a long time, debating whether to call him, whether to leave or knock, or just finally move on. Then the building door opened, and there he was. Evan stepped outside in a hoodie and joggers, earbuds in, clearly not expecting to see anyone, definitely not me. We locked eyes across the street, and I saw it, the surprise, the hesitation, and then something else. He crossed the street without saying a word. Hey, he said softly. I nodded. Hey. A pause. Want to talk? He asked. I didn't answer right away. I just turned and started walking, and after a beat, he fell into step beside me. We ended up on a quiet bench in a nearby park, the kind with those old iron lamps that cast a soft yellow glow on the pavement. He sat close, but not too close, like he wasn't sure where the line was anymore. I've been an asshole, he said, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't disagree, he sighed. Seeing Adam messed with my head. We had a history, and when someone like that shows up out of nowhere and says all the things you wish they'd said when it mattered, it scrambles you. I stayed quiet, let him keep going. But the thing is, he said, turning to me, when I was sitting across from him, all I could think about was you. That made my throat tighten. I thought I wanted closure, he said, but I realized I already had it. What I needed was to stop looking backward and start showing up for the thing that's actually real. I finally looked at him. You hurt me, I said, not just because you saw him, but because you didn't trust me enough to tell me first. I felt like I was waiting to be dumped. I know, he said, his eyes shining now. And I'm sorry. I panicked. I didn't want to screw this up, and somehow I managed to do exactly that. We sat in silence again, but this time it didn't feel as cold. It felt like something was shifting. I missed you, I said quietly. He reached for my hand, hesitant, like asking permission. I'm here now, he said, and I'm done running backwards. I squeezed his hand. Okay, I whispered. Then let's move forward, together. And in that moment, under the quiet glow of the street lamp, it felt like we had a shot again, not at starting over, but at continuing, with our eyes open and our hearts finally honest. We didn't pretend everything was magically fine after that night. That wasn't us. But something did shift. There was a weight lifted, the kind that only falls off when the hard words have finally been said. Evan and I started slow again, not from scratch, but from something stronger. Something honest. The next week, he showed up to my place with breakfast. Bagels, and that weird herbal tea he was always trying to convert me to. No grand gestures, no apologies wrapped in roses. Just him, standing in my doorway with tired eyes and that crooked smile. "Thought I'd make the first move this time," he said. We spent that Sunday in bed, not just in the cliché way, but in the real way. Reading, talking, sometimes just lying there in comfortable silence while the rain tapped on the windows. At one point, I caught him watching me. "What?" I asked. "Nothing," he said. "Just glad you're still here." And I was. We started stitching the relationship back together slowly. Little things. He'd send me pictures of ugly graffiti he knew I'd like. I'd save the last bite of dessert for him without saying anything. We went on real dates again. Movies, museums, late-night diners. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't worried about what he wasn't saying. We were just us. One night, while walking home from a dive bar, he stopped me mid-sentence. "I want to introduce you to my mom." I blinked. "What?" He looked nervous but determined. "She's visiting in a couple weeks. I want her to meet the person who makes me smile at my phone like an idiot all day." It was a small sentence, but it meant everything. We didn't talk about Adam again. Not because we were avoiding it, but because we'd already put it in its place. A chapter, not a threat. A past, not a pattern. One night, lying in bed with our feet tangled together, Evan whispered, "You know what's funny?" "What?" "I thought I knew what love was before, but it never looked like this. This quiet, steady thing." I turned toward him, fingers tracing the soft curve of his jaw. "That's because it wasn't," I said. He leaned in, forehead against mine. "I'm not scared anymore." Neither was I. A month later, Evan officially moved in. Not in a big, dramatic way. There was no U-Haul, no Instagram post, just his toothbrush joining mine again. This time permanently. His socks started appearing in my drawer, his books stacked next to mine on the shelf, his hoodie hanging next to my jacket like it had always belonged there. And honestly, it just felt right. We learned the small stuff fast. How I leave cabinet doors open like a menace. How he hogs the covers without realizing it. He folds his t-shirts with almost militant precision. I cram mine into drawers like they're running from something. But none of it felt like a problem. It felt like us. One night, while I was doing dishes, he came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. "You remember the first thing you ever said to me?" he asked. Something sarcastic, I'm sure. You said, "Bold of you to assume I didn't just throw my most tolerable songs into one playlist to impress strangers." I laughed. "That's still true, by the way." He kissed the side of my neck. "Well, it worked. I'm impressed. Fully, irrevocably impressed." We had survived the worst part, doubt. We had looked it in the eye, named it, and decided to stay anyway. That was the most romantic thing I'd ever known. A few weeks later, Evan surprised me with a short trip. Just the two of us. Some cabin a couple hours out of the city. No Wi-Fi, no distractions. Just quiet, woods, and wine. The second night there, we sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, stars scattered above us, like a ceiling we hadn't earned but got anyway. "I love you," he said simply, like he was just stating a fact. "I love you too," I said. No fear, no doubt. That was the night we stopped waiting for the next shoe to drop. Because we finally believed it wouldn't. We still have disagreements, dumb ones usually. We still have moments where we retreat into ourselves. But now, we always come back. We choose to come back. And that choice, over and over again, that's what love is. We met through a screen, fell for each other through songs and sarcasm, nearly lost it to old ghosts. And somehow, we built something better than either of us had planned. No dramatic ending, no huge twist, just two people who found something good and decided not to let it go. It had been a little over a year since Evan moved in, and most days still felt like this low simmering kind of magic. Not loud or flashy, just a quiet steadiness that made my world feel less like something I had to hold together, and more like something I got to live in. The morning it really hit me was a Sunday. I'd slept in later than usual, drifting in and out while the smell of coffee crept into the room. It wasn't even the smell that woke me. It was Evan's humming. A soft, slightly off-key melody floating in from the kitchen, like background music in a movie where the main character has already found what they didn't know they were looking for. I lay there for a while, just listening. I knew that hum. It was his I'm at peace sound. He only did it when things were good, when he was elbows deep in a new photo project or sautéing something way too elaborate just because he felt like it. Eventually, I peeled myself out of bed and shuffled toward the kitchen. He was in one of my old college t-shirts and a pair of boxers, barefoot, flipping pancakes like he was auditioning for a breakfast commercial. There were blueberries in the batter, my favorite, not his. When he turned and saw me, his face lit up like it always did when I walked into the room. Like he didn't know how to be chill about loving me. "You're up," he said, smiling. "Barely," I muttered, still groggy, rubbing my eyes. I walked over and wrapped my arms around his waist from behind, resting my chin on his shoulder, breathing in the scent of coffee and syrup and him. "You ever think about how weird this is?" I asked, voice muffled against his shirt. "Weird how? Like, this was a DM, a playlist, a few jokes. Now I'm wearing your shirt, and you're making me pancakes." He chuckled. "Weird good? Weird. Unbelievable." He turned to face me, his hands settling on my hips. His hair was a mess, eyes still soft from sleep. But he looked at me like he was exactly where he wanted to be. "I think about it all the time," he said. "How easily we could have missed this. If I hadn't messaged you, if you hadn't answered, if I'd gone back to Adam, even for a second longer. You know how close I came to screwing this up?" I touched his cheek. "Yeah, but you didn't." He leaned in and kissed me, slow and deliberate, like he was answering a question I hadn't asked. We ate breakfast in the tiny dining nook we'd made our own. Scratched table, mismatched chairs, one dying plant between us. Afterward, we sat on the couch in that lazy Sunday haze, legs tangled under a shared blanket, flipping through photos he'd taken on our last weekend trip. Beaches, forests, stupid selfies with horrible angles that I secretly loved. Then Evan glanced up from his laptop. "Let's hang the frames today," I blinked. "Seriously?" He nodded. "We've been meaning to for a year," I smiled. "Let's do it." The frames had been leaning against the wall since he moved in, some thrifted, some new, all carefully chosen. We spent the afternoon arranging them, arguing lightly over placement, hammering small nails into plaster. It felt like building something permanent, one photo at a time. There was the first photo he ever took of me, accidentally candid, me laughing at some dumb joke, eyes crinkled. A blurry Polaroid of us at a dive bar, flushed from beer and pool table victories. A picture of our shoes lined up at the front door. A shot from our weekend in the mountains, both of us curled up by the fire, wrapped in the same blanket. But the one we put in the center, the one we both stood still and stared at for a while, was from the cabin. It was late, we were outside on the porch, bundled together under a shared blanket. Evan had set up his tripod and timer. The stars were just beginning to come out, the sky behind us a deep blue that looked almost unreal. In the photo, he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and you can see it, that quiet, powerful thing that had grown between us. Love. Not in some Hallmark way, but in the kind of way that changes how you breathe, the kind that's earned, not found. We put that photo in the middle. We stepped back and looked at the wall for a long time. It didn't look perfect. The frames weren't aligned exactly, but it looked like us, imperfect, evolving, real. "You know," he said, "this isn't the life I imagined for myself." "Better or worse?" I asked. He smiled at me. "Better, so much better." And I knew what he meant, because we hadn't just made it work. We'd built something good. We weren't the kind of couple who talked about rings, not because we were avoiding anything. We just weren't in a rush. We both came from messy families and messier expectations, and neither of us believed in the fairy tale of one big moment fixing everything. We were more about the small things: grocery runs, late night walks, knowing the other person's coffee order without asking. So when Evan suggested a weekend trip to the Catskills in February, I thought it was exactly that, a weekend. A chance to get out of the city, breathe air that didn't smell like warm trash, maybe sit by a fireplace and read while he edited photos. The Airbnb was a tiny A-frame perched above a frozen lake. No Wi-Fi, no TV, just 2 rooms, a fireplace that crackled like it belonged in a movie, and floor-to-ceiling windows that made it feel like we were living inside a snow globe. On the second night, we bundled up after dinner and stepped outside just as the sun was starting to disappear. The sky was bleeding soft purples into the lake, and everything around us was quiet in that muffled way that only snow knows how to be. Evan was unusually quiet. He kept glancing at me like he was waiting for the right moment to say something and not finding it. I assumed he was deep in his head about a new photo series or something. He got like that sometimes, so I didn't press. We walked along the edge of the lake until the cabin was just a warm glow behind us. Then he stopped, turned to me, and pulled something small from his jacket. It was a ring, not in a box, not on one knee, no camera crew jumping out from behind a tree, just a plain silver band sitting in his palm like it had been waiting. I froze. Before I could say anything, he rushed to explain, the words tumbling out faster than usual. "It's not a proposal," he said. "Not in the capital P way. I mean, I'm not asking anything big. Not yet. I saw it one day in this tiny shop, and it reminded me of you. Not because of how it looks, but because of what it made me feel. Quiet, steady, real." I swallowed, heart pounding in my ears. "You got me a ring?" He smiled, nervous. "I guess I wanted you to have something. A reminder that I'm not going anywhere. That even when I'm being moody or bad at texting or disappear into editing for hours, I'm still yours." The cold faded from my skin in an instant. I looked down at the ring. It wasn't shiny or elaborate. It looked handmade, a little imperfect around the edges. Like something you'd wear every day and forget was even there until you glanced at your hand and remembered who gave it to you and why. "I didn't think I needed something like this," I whispered. "Neither did I," he said, "until I saw it. And I realized there's no one else I'd want to build a boring, beautiful life with." I didn't say yes. I didn't need to. I just took the ring, slid it on my middle finger, and let my hand settle into his like it belonged there. The wind picked up, snowflakes caught in his hair. He leaned in, forehead against mine, and whispered, "Whatever comes next. Hard days, slow years, the shit we can't see yet. I want it with you." I nodded. "Me too." We stayed out there until the cold bit our ears red, then went back inside and curled up in front of the fireplace, under one blanket, legs tangled, our bodies still carrying the weight of what we'd just done. Not a proposal, not an engagement. Just a promise. That night, while he slept beside me, arm draped across my chest, I stared at the ceiling, wide awake. I'd spent so long believing love had to look like a checklist. The ring changed nothing, and everything. It didn't mean we were done growing. It didn't promise we'd never mess up. It meant this: we'd keep choosing each other. And that, I realized, is the real love story.